get rid of the rights of corporations. It's abominable and the height of stupidity to give a corporation a piece of paper the same rights that we have as individuals, but none of the penalties.
Well, Russell, this is what we need. We need to get back. Imagine if people got into self-sufficiency. It would create an incredible economy if every little neighborhood together had their own wind power, their own solar panels, put in their own septic tanks, their own systems, like the Amish. Take the Amish. There's almost 300,000 of them in Illinois. They've done a study over 200,000 of them. No autism, much lower crime rate. In fact, no crime to speak of. I mean, they live in harmony because they're living in a natural way, and the state's coming in and kidnapping their kids now. The state had left the Amish alone. Now they're treating them like Native Americans in the 1870s. I mean, so we, to defend ourselves, we need to go back to being our own little communities. And if you don't like the neighborhood, the village you're in, you go find another one you like to move to.
Exactly. And that's the epitome of individual freedom, is local control. You know, the jury system used to be the last vestige against state power. When you had jury nullification, you could nullify an existing law if you felt, the jury felt, it didn't apply to that individual case. So any law could be nullified by 12 citizens, responsible citizens. But we've got to reinstitute, if we're going to be a free people, we have to reinstitute in the minds of our people the idea of responsibility.
Think of the power.
It's your responsibility to find out about who really is running this country, who really is Obama, where did he come from, and why? Why did he move from being a Harvard law graduate, editor of the Harvard Law Review? He had his pick of any legal firm he could go to in New York City, Chicago, Washington, D.C. He could have been a clerk for a Supreme Court justice. But what did he do? He goes to a city he never lived in, never even visited, Chicago, to work among the poor, allegedly, as a lawyer. And where did they put him? They put him in the most connected church in the black community. Also, they gave him a political mentor, the local black political boss of the South Side of Chicago. And there you have his path right to the White House.
In fact, Russell, I mean, there were a lot of cases, because I've read a lot of U.S. history. I mean, that was classic, that as Western expansion was taking place, that's how they would defeat the Native Americans, is they would go pay off some of the bad chiefs to get them to tell their people to stand down. And so people can't get that there's a guy who's, part black, that somehow, he, isn't a sellout to the New World Order. I mean, it's asinine. I mean, look, it's just on its face. And then now they're going to continue the secret arrest. They're going to continue. Now they're saying 23 months in Iraq. It was 6, then 16, now 23. 30,000 more troops, up to 60 in Afghanistan. Now they're talking about 90,000. He's talking about going into Iran, going into Pakistan. They're building FEMA camps, and it's in the news, and he wants to have a giant 18 to 24 compulsory service and a new domestic army. No law. The Pentagon just announced it as a new order, and they're building a camp outside Austin, Russell. I mean, this is really happening.
Exactly, and it's also, they've gotten rid of the laws protecting us against the National Army. Now the Department of Defense has jurisdiction, thanks to Homeland Security, has jurisdiction in any legal jurisdiction in the United States of America. That never before was possible, but now it is. The Army can come in for any reason. Before it was illegal.
Well, that's right. First it was 4,000 troops, then 20,000 troops. Now they're saying, 50,000 troops. Northcom and the governors are no longer over the National Guard. And the Army Times states, we are preparing to engage the American people. Is that not high treason and the government breaking its treaty through the Constitution and Bill of Rights with the people? Because that's a treaty with those colonies. It's the same thing. They've completely broken the treaty, admitted it themselves, and are saying, according to Time Magazine in this New World Order article, the title is New World Order. Zoom in on this, folks. It says a foreign global bank will rule the United States now. I mean, it's incredible.
That was institutionalized in 1913, the banks ruling America. And we got to remember that when we went, and I mentioned this earlier, that we were a producing, productive country up until the end of the 50s, 1950s, and then they started the switcheroo to making us consumers and emptying out all the production of America. They've emptied that out, and it took them less than 25 years. By the mid-'80s, we were a consumer nation. That's why Bush could say, go shopping. It's because that's what this country runs on now, consumerism.
Because they want you dependent on them, just like the Native Americans. And I know you're the expert on this, but I'm telling the listeners, I'd like you to elaborate and then tell folks the phone number and websites. I want to put his website up on screen, guys, so that people can join and get involved or support or learn more. That they would put people in these areas, they would control them, and you had to then, like welfare, get your food and blankets from the corrupt Indian agents who would then make the natives for even food when they're starving in the winter, hooker out their women, everything. I mean, it's the same thing today.
It is exactly the same thing. The Indian policies of America, the American Indian policies, have morphed first into their foreign policies, and now it's on their domestic policies. So it's just not in the ghettos and the barrios. It's in middle America. I mean, hello? Look at the housing crisis. That wiped out the middle class. And now you're going to become paupers, and you're going to have to depend on the federal government for them to dole out your food, for them to dole out. And then all these new diseases that keep coming, how come they're related to things we eat? Figure that out. Just figure that out. But we've got to be responsible, and we're all responsible for our own freedom. Not how and what we eat, but our freedom comes first. Our freedom comes before eating. Our freedom comes before work. Our freedom is the most important part of life. And if you don't know that, then you are a sheeple.
Because everything flows out of liberty. If you don't have the freedom and the liberty, it's over. But you know, a lot of folks I have on claim, you know, the core is our group. You know, the core models what happened to us. You know, people tend to centralize things around themselves. But I've studied broad history. And when you say that so much of the modern world system is based on the experience of the enslavement and extermination of 90+% of Native Americans, it's true. I've read the British reports. I read Hitler's speeches and Mein Kampf and his concentration camps and everything he did, what he did in Russia. It was all modeled after what was done to the natives, and that's been used all over the world, and it really is the model. And so that's what we're black folks saying, you can't have a man in the house. The government's going to give you money for your home to put them in an inner city so they can then ship in drugs, put them in prison, knowing the family would break down. I've got slave manuals written in the time of Julius Caesar when they would grab Germanic slaves of how they broke up the family, separated the men, put them on reservations to break them down. It's the same thing over and over again.
One of the hardest things about, and the best things about liberty and being free is you become family-oriented. Now, I'm not talking about blood family. I'm talking about, now once we become adults, we can choose our own family. You know, when we're born, we're not born into our family of choice. But when you're being free, you can choose your families. And if you look at Europe today, after all their tumultuous history, but they haven't emptied out their countries. They still make their own shoes, their own clothes, grow their own crops, make their own steel, and have all of the things necessary for a strong, vibrant country by itself, let alone joining together in the European Union. But America, emptied out. America's emptied out. That is not freedom, and that's not responsibility. Responsibility and freedom are one and the same. So if you're welcome to the Republic of Lakota, if you're responsible.
Absolutely. Tell folks the best website to visit and a phone number.
Of course, the republicoflakota.com and russellmeansfreedom.com.
russellmeansfreedom.com. We've got that up on screen right now.
Thank you. The phone number for the Republic of Lakota is 605-867-1111. 1111.
So that's 605-867-1111?
Correct.
605-867-1111. And if folks want to